I went from being neutral and just wanting Americans to stay out of the war to now being against Ukraine. People think the J6 insurrection was bad. A foreign flag is being flown inside the US Capitol while a foreign leader makes demands on the American people on American soil. Zelenskyy a few days ago delivered a major speech to the US Congress. It was a historic speech. You could really feel the history as you listened to it. It was a really good speech where he was quoting, American historical figures, talking about the ideological ties between the two nations. He was thanking the United States profusely for the amount of support we gave him, and talking about the future of the Ukrainian struggle 24 hours after he came back from the front line in Bakhmut. And I already talked about how Zelenskyy's outfit was covered quite a lot by random rightoid commentators. It wasn't just rightoid. There were some lefty types as well, but it was mostly rightoid. Charlie Kirk being one of them. Benny Johnson got really angry. Somebody who works with TPUSA and considers himself a conservative meme lord, one of the guys who thinks the right wing is the new counterculture. He was talking about how it was a disgrace that this rat Zelenskyy, or I think it was this thug or this punk Zelenskyy, would wear a green shirt instead of a suit to the Capitol. Nobody seemed to tell him, though, nobody seemed to inform him that, Winston Churchill and other wartime leaders have come to the Capitol in, not suits, but quite, leisurely attire. And if you were to, talk to Zelenskyy and ask him why he was wearing a green shirt and green pants, it was in solidarity with the soldiers that are still fighting on the front line and dying on the front line, risking their lives every day. And because 24 hours before he came to the United States to give this speech, he was on the front line in Bakhmut, a city that the Russians are actively trying to capture right now. Every other day, there's a pro-Russian shill in my chat telling me how the Russians are going to capture Bakhmut today. And he went there, even though the Russian military has tried many times to assassinate him. And I already talked about that. We're going to talk about that a tiny bit today. But I wanted to talk about just the bigger reaction after Zelenskyy's speech, because after the speech was made, for the next 48 hours, it's just been nothing but anti-Ukraine, anti-Zelenskyy coping and seething from a lot of rightoids on the internet. It really feels like that they don't have a substantive criticism to make, or if there are any substantive criticisms to make, they don't know how to make those substantive criticisms, and so they're just going for just random things to get outraged about. But here's just a few of these people who have extremely thin skin. One of my favorite, Lavrin Spicer, failed Republican primary candidate, got curb stomped, lost by it was double digits in the Republican primary, saying our government hates us because Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris held up a Ukrainian flag. The Libertarian Party tweeted out the picture traitors, not really caring about the non-aggression principle when it comes to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, saying that it is treason for Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris to hold up a Ukrainian flag after Zelenskyy made his speech. But, this is just a snapshot of it. This is just one example of many other people who got really angry about this. For example, Benny Johnson, the person I was just talking about, who got really angry that Zelenskyy would dare touch the Capitol not wearing a suit and tie from the finest tailor. By the way, can I just say, if Zelenskyy didn't wear a suit and tie and all of this stuff, I personally don't care. And I don't think that Benny Johnson really cares all that much. I have a weird feeling that, let's say Zelenskyy did wear a suit and tie, then this whole thing would just turn on its head and it would be like, oh, Zelenskyy wearing a suit and tie and whining and dining with American politicians while his country's being torn to shreds. I don't think there was really any way for Zelenskyy to present himself where Benny Johnson and others would not get angry. But as you can see here, he seems to be angry, as well as the other two were, about Zelenskyy having the Ukrainian flag behind him, the Ukrainian flag he gifted to the U.S. Congress that was signed by the soldiers who are currently fighting in Bakhmut. And he says, it is a disgrace to wave any other flag. It is a disgrace to wave any flag other than America's inside our capital. Well, first off, I wish I saw more outrage from Benny when it was the Confederate flag being waved in the Capitol during January 6th. I just, it's strange that this non-violent instance of another flag being waved, and it isn't a flag that directly represents treason to the United States, is getting a lot more passion from Benny than that other instance where people died. But I really don't understand the outrage here. This really does feel like that Zelensky's speech was really, really good. It was really historic. The vast majority of Americans support Ukraine. The vast majority of Americans support Zelenskyy. His arguments were cogent, and there's not really much to critique. And so Benny Johnson and other thin-skinned individuals have nothing to complain about, nothing to whine about, nothing to get, if I'm going to use a word that might upset them, triggered over. And so they're just going after him because, oh, he didn't wear the suit I wanted him to wear. Or, oh, how dare they wave a gift that the Ukrainian government gave us, the Ukrainian flag signed by these soldiers. How dare they wave that behind them? I don't know. Like, what does he think's going to happen that this flag was waved in the Capitol? Does he think now, like, all of America is just a one big Ukrainian oblast? We've been annexed. We've been taken over by a foreign nation. I think it was done as a gesture of goodwill between two states that are allies, that are working together. We're assisting them, and they're extremely helpful for our assistance. I don't know where the anger is and why they're getting so upset at a really just like a ceremonial piece of cloth. Not to mention, like 1 or 2 minutes after this, Nancy Pelosi presents Zelenskyy with a gift from us, which is an American trifold flag. And behind them, as you can see, there is a American flag that is permanently within the Capitol that is there all the time. I don't understand what the problem is. What negative thing does this cause to just do this nice gesture of goodwill, this nice symbolic gesture? I really wish Benny Johnson showed as much outrage at the murders that were recently revealed on camera that Russian soldiers did against Ukrainian civilians, or the murders that were revealed 8 or 9 months ago in Bucha, once the Russians left and satellite photos showed that they executed civilians in the city, or the largest mass grave uncovered in Europe since the Yugoslav civil wars that was uncovered in Izium, 440 bodies. I don't know why this symbolic gesture particularly is getting more anger out of Benny, getting him to say, oh, this is a disgrace, than any of those actions. Because I just don't see the same level of outrage. This really just feels kind of virtue signaling, if I'm being completely honest. And Candace Owens is another person who got ridiculously angry at the Zelenskyy visit. For example, listen to what she had to say about Zelensky's outfit, which, again, I already did another video where they endlessly complained about Zelensky's outfit, but apparently rightoids on the internet have not gotten enough of a fill of going after Zelensky's simplistic outfit. I cannot stop laughing at how Zelenskyy always intentionally styles himself like he just came out of the trenches as a recurring piece of propaganda. He just has no time to put on a suit, guys. So busy doing hero things with your money. And then she posts a bunch of pictures of Zelenskyy in his wearing a green shirt, saying that, oh, look how much he's trying to fool the world. First off, somebody posts a reaction to this that I've been talking about all day. This is Churchill visiting the White House during the Second World War. Do you think Churchill just popped out of a trench right before he had this meeting? Do you think Churchill was playing hero when he was the leader of a nation at war with the Nazis, trying to, beat the Nazis? Quite honestly, I think that Churchill's outfit looks a lot more leisurely than even Zelenskyy's did. And the difference between this and Zelenskyy's outfit is this did not cause a bunch of outrage, a huge stir 80 years ago when this happened. So what changed in the last 80 years that suddenly now, oh no, you need to wear a suit when you come to the White House or it's disrespectful? What cultural change happened? What happened where the British can do this during World War II, but now no. Zelenskyy needs to be held to a higher standard than Winston Churchill when it comes to outfit and dress. What is this ridiculous standard? Not to mention the fact this was an outfit Churchill was wearing, probably for a similar reason that Zelenskyy is wearing it, to remind the people of the war that their nations are at war, they're fighting an existential war, and that they show solidarity with those fighting on the front line. But also, Churchill, when he had this picture taken at the White House, he didn't visit the front line right before this picture was taken. Zelenskyy, before these pictures were taken, the one on the left here, the main one, 24 hours before this picture was taken, Zelenskyy was in the city of Bakhmut, which is literally on the front line of the war, and the Russians are fighting desperately right now, sending wave after wave after wave of Russian conscripts and prisoners who are fighting on behalf of the Wagner group in order to try to capture the city. They are bombing anything that moves in Bakhmut in an attempt to flatten it and capture it. They want to capture it in order to capture the entirety of the Donbass. They want to capture that. They want to capture Kramatorsk, but Bakhmut is the next big step for the Russians. And they have been failing. Well, even before November, they've been failing to capture Bakhmut. But it is it's a location that is especially being fought over hard right now. And so Zelenskyy, despite the fact that the Russian government has tried to assassinate him countless times, went to the frontline city, embarrassed the Russians, and helped the morale of the local defenders, explaining to them just the nature of their struggle and the importance of their struggle for defending all of Ukraine. And if you listen to his speech, which I did listen to his speech to these soldiers, he's telling them, like, you're not just defending the Donbass, you're defending here, this city here, so the Russians don't come to your villages all across the country, so they don't come and pillage everywhere else in Ukraine, which they've already pillaged in Kherson, they've already pillaged in Zaporozhye. We don't want them to burn our country to the ground, and you're stopping them from doing that. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Do you think Putin has done that? Has Putin gone to Ukraine and filmed on the front lines? No, he hasn't. You want to know why? Because he would be too terrified of Ukrainian civilians assassinating him once they notice that was Vladimir Putin, because they hate him. But the Ukrainians don't seem overwhelmingly to hate Zelenskyy to that same extent. In fact, he has a pretty high approval rating, so he didn't have anything to fear about being assassinated by, the general civilians. He's worried about being assassinated by the Russian military. But he still went. So when she says, oh, he wears that outfit like he just came out of the trenches, he quite literally just did come out of the trenches. He just came back from the city of Bakhmut. How can you unintentionally be this completely ignorant to the current status of the war and what Zelenskyy is doing? This unintentionally just like falling completely flat on your face, just not knowing what Zelenskyy was doing before he met Biden. Moving on, here's Pedro being a drama queen. Pedro Gonzalez, if you don't know about him, he was like involved in this whole shoe on head Balenciaga stuff when he tried to take that to kind of like throw it at the queer community. Well, anyway, he responded to this saying, I went from being neutral and just wanting Americans to stay out of the war to now being against Ukraine. People think the J6 insurrection was bad. A foreign flag is being flown inside the U.S. Capitol while a foreign leader makes demands on the American people on American soil. Oh my God. How dastardly. A symbolic gesture? How will America ever recover? How will our nation be able to pick up the pieces now that we've fallen for such despotism? Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It isn't like, Winston Churchill addressed the U.S. Congress during the Second World War, or Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't addressed the United States Congress in the past, or other world leaders haven't done a similar thing in the past. Is all of this really over the flag being unfurled? What magic thing happened once this flag was unfurled? By the way, a flag which again was a gift to the U.S. Congress because it's signed by the defenders of Bakhmut. That's a real piece of Ukrainian history right there. If you listen to Zelenskyy's speech, I assume Pedro didn't, or if he did, then he's just purposely misrepresenting it. It is a giant love letter to the United States where he's quoting our historical figures and he's talking about American values and American dedication to freedom and how much America has helped Ukraine. And he says, oh, he's making demands of the U.S. people. He's not making demands of the U.S. people. He says, we still need more to win. It would be really helpful to have more stuff to win. And you want to know what? That's a fact. He's the leader of Ukraine. He is saying, you are the United States, the wealthiest nation to ever exist, with the mightiest military to ever exist. Even if sometimes people like to pretend that the transgenderism or the homosexuality has degraded our military, turned it into dust, we can see from the war in Ukraine that corruption is really the thing that undermines military effectiveness. That lack of morale is something that really undermines military effectiveness. And all these weapons that we've designed for the last 80 years to beat Russia in a major land war, oh my God, who would have thought, are perfect for beating Russia in a major land war. So yeah, he is asking us, the people who are the experts in designing weapons to fight the Russians, if he could have some of the weapons to fight the Russians. And we've given him some, he wants more. It is up to us to make a decision on whether we give that to him or not. But he's not making demands of the American people like, I am the foreign leader, you must give me your weapons. He's not saying that. He's making the case. And if you listen to him, he's not even saying, oh, give me your charity. He is saying to the American people, he is saying to the American government, hey, I don't want this to be considered charity. I don't want this to be charity. I want you to consider this as an investment in the future security of the world, a future economic relationship between our two countries. He's making a good case. He's making his pitch to the American people. He isn't like some tin box dictator pulling a pistol out of his pocket, like pointing it at the American people. You will give me what I want. I am occupying the United States. I don't understand why there's so much outrage over such a small symbolic gesture. Here's Ian Miles Chong, well-known doxer and all-around scumbag, tweeting out, when members of the Slovakian parliament tried to hold up the Ukrainian flag, others poured water on the flag and held up the Slovakian flag instead. Congress should have done the same. There should only be one flag in Congress. Now, number one, as the fact check that Elon Musk added to this points out, not Elon Musk, but Twitter, number one, this video is from before the war. Number two, this is from one of the people who are pouring this water and doing this is from one of the most disgusting far-right parties you can have in all of Slovakia that would make Azov blush, okay? And number three, these people are crybaby bitches as well. I don't understand how you can be so unbelievably angry at somebody saying, hey, I would like to show solidarity with the nation that is having its people shoved into mass graves and murdered, having its women raped, having its people displaced, having its land illegally invaded, having its land illegally annexed. Like, I don't understand how you, looking at that situation, is like, how dare they? They're not asking for Slovakia or the United States to be annexed by Ukraine. It's just a symbol of solidarity. I don't know how you can be such a crybaby bitch that you take away from this, like, oh, these are the real alpha males in this scenario, because they couldn't deal with a piece of cloth, a piece of clothing. And you can see them throwing water on the people holding up the flag. Ian Miles Chong, so-called warrior of free speech. If somebody says something you don't like, then you should throw water bottles at them and pour water on them and tear their signs and flags out of their hands. But I'm Ian Miles Chong. I'm Ian Miles Chong, and I care about freedom of expression. You know, that's why I'm always in Elon Musk's replies, begging him to unban all of my scumbag friends. Also, can I just also point out here that Ian Miles Chong doesn't even live in the United States, okay? He lives in Malaysia. I don't understand why his opinion on a foreign flag being flown in the United States, flown in the United States Congress matters to a guy who doesn't even fucking live here. Next. I have also seen a lot of people bringing up this clip, this old clip of Zelenskyy dancing from when he was a comedian, when he was on a comedy show. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but this is like some part of like some SNL thing in Ukraine where he did like a skit where he was like in high heels and in a funny outfit, like, oh, look at me, I'm in feminine clothing, yada yada. But in the last 48 hours, like, I've already seen this as like, oh, haha, comedic, whatever. There seems to be a lot of people, I don't know if this is true for Rogan O'Handley here, but who legitimately think that this is part of some like emasculation. This is like a sign of Zelensky's weakness in some way because he wore in effect what is kind of like drag. I don't know how to break this to people, but Rudy Giuliani wore drag for a comedy skit, and after he wore drag for a comedy skit, Trump proceeded to go up, grab his breasts, and like sniff his neck in said comedy skit. So I'm gonna be honest, drag has touched many presidencies in many countries, and I don't understand how this is important or relevant at all, or who cares. If you just point it out because you think it's funny, okay, but I am seeing more and more people trying to legitimately treat this seriously, and I'm starting to get a migraine over it. We got more here. Hawley recently said this about the president of Ukraine coming, calling it a photo op. Let's listen.
I didn't go to the speech because I didn't want to be part of a photo op asking for more money from the United States government when they haven't given us a single piece of accounting on anything they spent.
Josh Hawley told us it's a photo op, and even if it is a photo op. What do you respond?
Good for him.
I love perfect response, but I just gotta say, okay, if you don't want to be part of some ceremony, you don't have to go there, right? Like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert did not have to go if they were going to whine the whole time and stayed seated, and then afterwards like virtue signal about, oh, we're so brave, which is what they've been doing for the last 24 hours, saying how brave they were because they wouldn't stand up during Zelensky's speech. So I do respect him a little bit more because he just didn't go. If you didn't want to go, you just don't go. But when he calls it a photo op, Josh Hawley is the last person I want to be hearing, critiques about photo ops, when during January 6th, he went out there, he held up his fist like, yeah, cheering on the J6 protesters before they stormed the Capitol. And then as they began to storm the Capitol, that dude was running through the halls of Congress trying to get to safety. So if you want to talk about photo ops, I think Josh Hawley is the worst people to be that ambassador. Also, I've seen a lot of people like Jackson Hinkle here talking about, hey, the American people stand with Russia to defeat Nazism in Ukraine, just as we stood with the Soviet Union to defeat Nazism in Germany. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But the thing is, Jackson, and everybody who believes this, you live in a bubble. And when I say you live in a bubble, I mean you live in a bubble. You live in a hardcore online bubble. If you think that the American people support the Russian invasion and are happy that Russia invaded Ukraine, you are completely disconnected from reality, and you need to get off of Twitter. You need to get off of Mastodon. You need to get off of Instagram. You need to get off any of these Discord pages, Discord groups you're a part of. You need to get off of Truth Social. You need to get off of Gab. You need to get off of the Reddit threads or the Chan threads, 8chan, 4chan, any of them. You need to get off of any of the Q boards, all of this, because you have delusioned yourself. The vast majority of Americans, no holds barred, not only support Ukraine, but support sending weapons to Ukraine. Here's a poll from just 2 months ago. 3 in 4 Americans say U.S. should support Ukraine despite Russian threats, in reference to Russian nuclear threats of nuclear annihilation. Even in the face of that, 3 in 4 Americans, over 75%, say the United States should stand with Ukraine against the Russian invasion. There is no poll you can find where the majority of Americans don't A, support Ukraine, and B, support sending aid to Ukraine. If you believe that the majority of Americans do not agree with this, that's because you've disillusioned yourself. Look, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't. I'm not a death penalty guy, right? I'm not going to get really angry if some mass murderer gets executed, but I have structural reasons for being against the death penalty and how it's been used disproportionately and how it's also killed innocent people. And I believe the fundamental values of the United States when it comes to, innocent until proven guilty and making sure everybody gets a fair trial. If somebody's dead and we find out later that they're innocent, you cannot release them if they're, dead. So I believe that. I believe that the death penalty is wrong. I don't think it has a big negative effect on crime, but I'm not going to pretend that the majority of Americans are against the death penalty, because that would be wrong. That would be a lie. I would be completely disconnected if I believe the majority of Americans do not want to have the death penalty for horrific crimes. I would just be wrong, and I wouldn't make the claim that that was the case. Maybe if I spent all my time in anti-death penalty Reddit threads and anti-death penalty Twitter groups and Twitter spaces and Discord groups, then maybe due to the bubble I've placed myself in, I can try to trick myself into thinking that's the case. But Jackson, I think he got higher education, or at least I will assume so. Come on, man. You know this is bullshit. I don't even know why you're saying it. And anybody who believes it are stupider than Jackson for buying into this schmuck nonsense.
Burns is an immoral, morally
corrupt, bankrupt man. Hey, thank you so much, Epsilupa, for the Prime and being sub for 7 months. I appreciate it. Also, I want to talk about 3 more tweets because I want to use these as examples. Because earlier in these tweets, I was showing you the context added by Twitter.com to one of the tweets about Ukraine. And I have to say, I give Elon Musk a lot of criticism, to put it lightly. I have critiqued how the Starlink stuff went down. I have critiqued his peace proposal for Ukraine. I have critiqued what I saw as his hypocrisy on banning people on Twitter.com. I have critiqued a lot of things. But even if I think I'm getting more DMs from bots than ever, there is one thing I think that Elon has done well on Twitter, and that are the context boxes. So before Elon was on the website, there were these context boxes which would tell you more information about, say, COVID or something of political importance if there was misinformation being spread about it. But it wasn't that common. And I've seen them become more and more and more common for these major tweets. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I think they're fantastic for online discourse, fantastic for holding people accountable, and fantastic to making sure that misinformation can't spread quickly without at least giving people the full context of the story. And let me give you 3 examples of this recent drama, quote unquote, of Zelenskyy visiting Ukraine, where this worked fantastically. First off, Candace Owens, where she tweeted, "We want nothing to do with you," in response to Zelenskyy saying "Hey, I'm happy to come to the United States. We want nothing to do with you. Stop stealing from our people while your wife drops tens of thousands of dollars shopping in Paris. Despicable." This came off of, this is from a rumor where Zelenskyy's wife was basically spending tens of thousands of dollars while shopping in Paris during the war. And the context added by Twitter.com, there is no evidence that Ukrainian First Lady Olena, I never know how to pronounce her last name, Olena, went on a shopping spree during her diplomatic trip to Paris. Damn. Free speech warrior Elon Musk strikes his own. What's the next one? Hey, look, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's put a bunch of money in the hands of a Ukrainian Jewish person. And you want to know what? I'll assume that it's just good political criticism and not an anti-Semitic message from the Jewish space laser lady and the person who compared COVID to the Holocaust and then had to apologize at the Holocaust Museum for it. I'll be good faith here. And she tweets out, 18 Republican traitors who voted for the 1.7 trillion Omni monster, she's referring to the budget bill, to send your money to defend Ukraine's border, but not America's border. And then she names all of these politicians who voted in favor of it, that she has deemed traitors, like Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, Cotton, a bunch of Republican senators. But the context added was the spending bill included $16.464 billion for border security, a 17% increase over 2022 funding. Oh my God. Clothesline by Elon Musk. Let's do one more. I enjoy these so much. Glenn Greenwald, and I've seen nobody fall from grace faster than Glenny boy. Good morning. The U.S. Congress is about to send another $44 billion to Boeing, Raytheon, and the CIA for the war in Ukraine. I guess Glenn has other motivations in his head. That's a total of $100 billion sent by the U.S. in 10 months. The entire Russian military budget for the year is $65 billion. Oh, so he's saying we've sent $100 billion in military aid, and they only have a $65 billion budget. How has Ukraine not already won? I mean, wow, there must be something, crazy afoot. But then you scroll down, and Twitter, once again, with the clothesline, with the diamond cutter off the top rope, the $44 billion figure largely includes economic and humanitarian aid 27.86 billion of the total amount would go directly towards defense for Ukraine and NATO. The rest would go towards other economic and humanitarian programs to address the devastation caused by the Russian war. So damn, not only is 100 million not military aid, and we're just talking about now 27.86 billion, but out of that 27.86 billion, some of it isn't even going to Ukraine. Some of it's going just to general NATO spending. Anyway, I love these things. I think they're great to just smack liars across the face with. I love it. I'm a big fan. 2 thumbs up from Dylan Burns. That's the one endorsement of one of Elon Musk's policies that I have to give. I don't know exactly why there's been so much Republican coping and seething over Zelensky's trip. Is it because Republicans have underperformed in the last 3 elections in 2018, 2020, and 2022, and so they hate to see another underdog succeed? Is it because they believe that Vladimir Putin is leading a Christian crusade against Ukraine and the transgenderism and the homosexuality and the evil of liberal democracy? Is it because of just general bigotry towards foreigners? Or is it because of concerns about sending all this American aid to a foreign country when it should be, here at home, going into the pockets of billionaires? I don't know. I think it's probably a diverse amount. I think it's a little bit of everything here. I also think it's a heavy dose of contrarianism as well. But I do want to remind all of you, because I have gotten the most DMs from my followers in the last 48 hours telling me that this is the most vitriol they've ever seen from Westerners about Ukraine. That in the last 48 hours, they have gotten more hateful messages, more death threats, more pretty negative stuff directed at them than they have in a very long time. And for those people, I would just like to say that these are, at the moment, of course, the political winds can change, but at the moment, this is a radical online minority. This is people who are heavily online in internet bubbles. While I go out in the community in my town, and when I was in Buffalo, New York, or when I was in Miami, I see Ukrainian flags. I see people, or Delaware, I see Ukrainian flags. Maryland, I see Ukrainian flags. In Buffalo, I saw Ukrainian flags. I see people who support Ukraine. When I talk to local politicians, they support Ukraine. When I get to have some conversation with staffers, congressional staffers, they support Ukraine, and the people in Congress support Ukraine. There were only 2 people who sat down during Zelensky's speech, and it was Lauren Boebert, who barely lost her re-election campaign, and Matt Gaetz, who for the better part of the last 2 years has been swept up in a sex trafficking scandal. I mean, you've got other people like Josh Hawley and Marjorie Taylor Greene, but again, these are not people with immense political influence, and right now it's still a political minority. So I would say that this isn't something we should just completely ignore. We need to push back on it. I really like NAFO, in part because it pushes back on a lot of this disinformation and a lot of the nonsense that's being put out there. But we got to make sure we continue to do that. But while we're doing it, we can't get caught up in the idea that this is what the world's like, that the whole world is now against Ukraine because we've interacted with a few people that are a little schizophrenic on the internet. Majority of people still support Ukraine. These people are being, I think, a lot of it's contrarianism. I think the trip went quite well. And no amount of Republican or rightoid or leftoid coping and seething about it is going to change that. Trip was a success. Good job to Zelensky. Good job to Biden. And I guess good job to Soros for organizing it all. Good job, buddy. Love you. Thank you so much for the job. I appreciate it.